Hello and welcome. I'm Holly Lyons, Director of the Fiscal Services Division of the Iowa Legislative Services Agency, LSA. We are a nonpartisan support agency of the Iowa General Assembly. In this video, Dave Reynolds, Jeff Robinson, and I will review the Governor's recommendation of the Iowa General Fund budget for fiscal years 2018 and 2019. This video is intended to be a brief summary of our analysis of the Governor's budget recommendation document. As required by Iowa Code, the Governor's budget is based on the December 2017 REC estimates. The Governor's General Fund budget results in surpluses totaling $3.6 million for fiscal year 2018 and $192.4 million for fiscal year 2019. The Governor is recommending net adjustments to fiscal year 2018 appropriations totaling $27.1 million to eliminate a projected budget shortfall of approximately $35 million. The Governor's budget also includes additional revenue due to Iowa's federal deductibility law and the recent enactment of the Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
Hello, I'm Jeff Robinson. The Department of Revenue has begun to analyze the Federal Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to determine the law's projected impact on Iowa General Fund tax revenue. Iowa law allows taxpayers to deduct federal income taxes paid from their income when computing Iowa taxable income. Full deductibility for individual income taxpayers and 50% deductibility for corporate taxpayers. This means that when the federal government makes any significant change to its tax policies, there is likely an automatic impact on Iowa net general fund revenue. An increase in federal income taxes results in a negative impact on Iowa revenue, and the December legislation is expected to result in lower federal income tax revenue. Therefore, Iowa revenue should increase. Earlier this month, the Revenue Estimating Conference, or REC, received a briefing on the Department's preliminary findings of the automatic impacts of individual income tax federal deductibility. These changes are expected to increase general fund revenue by $11.2 million in fiscal year 18 and $110.8 million in fiscal year 19. These revenue adjustments have been included by the Governor on the balance sheet.
Hello, I'm Dave Reynolds. I will now take you through the Governor's General Fund balance sheet. The Governor's revised fiscal year 18 General Fund budget includes total resources of $7,249 million. This includes the December REC estimate of $7,238 million and a revenue adjustment totaling $11.2 million. This is due to an anticipated increase in state income tax revenue resulting from federal tax law changes that Jeff Robinson previously discussed. For general fund appropriations, the Governor is recommending net reductions of $27.1 million to the already enacted appropriations for fiscal year 18. These net appropriation adjustments include reductions totaling $29.6 million and increases of $2.5 million. The two most significant reductions are $10 million from Medicaid funding and $5.1 million from the Regents institutions. Most departments on the Governor's list for reductions would receive a cut of about 0.9%, and the Governor is allowing departments discretion as to where reductions would be made. The Governor is also recommending supplemental appropriations of $2 million for the Indigent Defense Program and $450,000 to cover a projected shortfall in utility costs for the Capitol Complex. The Governor is not recommending any cuts to state school aid in fiscal year 18. The projected ending balance of the Governor's fiscal year 18 budget is $3.6 million. Moving on to fiscal year 19, the Governor's budget includes total resources of $7,633 million. This includes the REC estimate of $7,527 million and a net revenue adjustment of $106.9 million. This revenue adjustment includes an increase of approximately $111 million that is associated with the federal tax law changes and a decrease of $3.9 million due to transferring some sales tax revenue for metered water out of the general fund as part of the Governor's support for water quality initiative. Like the General Assembly, the Governor must also adhere to an expenditure limitation, which is approximately 99% of available revenues. The expenditure limitation for the Governor's fiscal year 19 budget is $7,558 million. The governor is recommending appropriations that total $7,447 million for fiscal year 19, which is $111 million below the expenditure limitation. After accounting for $5 million in estimated reversions, the governor leaves a surplus of $192 million in the general fund for fiscal year 19.
This table shows the governor's fiscal year 2019 appropriation recommendations by budget subcommittee. The governor's recommendation represents an increase of $169 million, or 2.3% over estimated fiscal year 2018. Please note that here we are comparing the governor's fiscal year 2019 budget to the fiscal year 2018 appropriations that were enacted into law, and not the fiscal year 2018 appropriations with the governor's recommended adjustments. Of the governor's total increase of $169 million, 86% is associated with three appropriations. The first is an increase of $55 million for the Medicaid program. This increase funds Medicaid at $10 million below the forecasting group's estimated need when combined with other changes to revenues and expenditures. The recommendation does not reflect any increases in capitation rates for the two managed care organizations that Iowa contracts with. As a point of reference, the capitation rate increases in fiscal year 18 totaled $60.6 million. The second increase is an estimated $54 million for state school aid. The governor's school aid recommendation funds the supplemental state aid growth rate at 1.5% and also includes a $15 million reduction to the area education agencies, which is in addition to the statutory reduction of $7.5 million. The third item is a $35.6 million increase in the appropriation to the cash reserve fund, and this requires a little more explanation. During the 2017 legislative session, there were two appropriations enacted to reimburse the cash reserve fund for a fiscal year 17 transfer of $131 million to the general fund. These two appropriations included $20 million for fiscal year 18 and $111 million for fiscal year 19. The governor is recommending a 50% reduction to the $111 million appropriation, bringing that number down to $55.6 million. This reduced appropriation is an increase of $35.6 million when compared to fiscal year 2018. Finally, the governor's recommendation puts the combined balances of the state's two reserve funds at $677 million for fiscal year 2019. This is 89% of the maximum allowed by statute. I hope you found this review of the Governor's General Fund budget recommendations helpful. Thank you for your time and interest in the Iowa General Fund budget. I encourage you to refer to our entire budget recommendation analysis summarized in this video. Contact our staff if you have questions or need more information about the state of Iowa's budget.